Good evening and welcome back to the Box to Box podcast. It is only me and Charles tonight, so we don't have a guest. It is just the two of us, but we'll plow on anyways. Charles, how are you doing on this? Well, I don't know where you are, but it's quite windy where I am.
Yeah, it is quite windy here as well. Yeah, I'm fine, mate. Feels a bit lonely without Jonathan. Obviously, the 1 week Albion
I
actually
know,
win, he doesn't show up. So
Jonathan.
hopefully,
If you get the chance to watch this back, we miss you,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
1 week we really, really wanted you to be here. We're not, but anyway, I'm sure we'll get you on at some point very soon, and we'll chat about that win. Anyway, Charles, we'll get on to our first topic: Premier League review, as always. Wolves won a game. You must be
yeah,
happy.
yeah, definitely. I think again, it's a big win. Obviously, with our first win of the season against Southampton, that was just as big. But I mean, the way we can just sort of settle sometimes and actually beat teams around us is going to really play out quite importantly by the end of the season. So, I mean, we've spoke about it. It's time now for the big players to step up. As we saw with Everton last season, they had to really dig in, and I think Wolves could be in the same sort of situation come the end of the season. In all honesty,
It was a game of two penalties, wasn't it? Of course, you scoring one thanks to Ruben Neves, and then Brennan Johnson of Nottingham Forest having one saved by Jose Sarr, who had what part of his body was broken again? Remind me.
I think he's had a fractured wrist for a number of months now. As a goalkeeper,
I mean, fair play to him for saving that penalty with a broken bone in his wrist.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, as I say, Forest, they certainly had chances in that game, but I think is it just one of those games where you had to just sort of win no matter how it happened?
Just stuck in, mate. Get in and just really try and grind out the 3 points. And I'm really glad we did that. And I think everyone who's a Wolves fan and around Wolves as well, the players as well, probably just more relief than anything. I mean, yeah, it was a great save from Sarr, but if that does go in, the whole sort of atmosphere changes, and everything. The emotions change around the ground, and things could start to turn quite bad quite quickly. So big 2 games coming up as well. So hopefully it can continue some sort of.
Yeah, are you at home? Are you at home away tomorrow?
Yeah, away to Palace, away at Palace
Tough
tomorrow.
Tough test.
And yeah, really struggled to play football there, as I said earlier as well. In recent years, we just can't seem to get going in these sort of tight grounds. I mean, under Nuno, we played quite a lot of switching of the play, and we found that grounds like QPR and Palace were just a bit too tight for us to be able to actually play our football. So we need to adapt and really dig in, because you see a lot of teams actually go to Palace and play quite well, but Wolves never really seem to do that.
Speaking of Nuno, there are rumours.
Yeah,
that he may be making a sort of a triumphant return. Firstly, I don't know what the latest is on that, and do inform us if you have any information. And if it were to happen, would you be happy?
Well, I think there's a lot of divided opinion on Twitter. Definitely, it's sort of one of those where you just don't know, and your heart says one thing and your head says another. Do I think it'd be a good appointment? You see, I don't really know. It's literally the biggest gamble. I mean, one way you can compare it is look at West Ham with David Moyes. I mean, he came back after quite a torrid spell and got them European football. But at the same time, you don't want Nuno to come back and then things not go his way and his legacy to be ruined at the club. So it could go one or two ways. I think the latest is he is keen. Apparently, so it's been reported he's keen to come back, and why wouldn't he be? I think it's an attractive job. He's done it before at Wolves. I think he's probably just waiting to sort of understand what the plan is, because he doesn't want to go for one thing and end up it going the complete wrong way. So yeah, I'm very split on it. I think if he came in and it meant we stay in the Premier League, then yeah, just get him in, But if he came in and it had any sort of percentage of chance that it could risk and ruin his reputation that he's built at the club over those years, then I'd probably rather he just stays
Yeah.
away. It's one of those.
Yeah, I totally get that. I don't know, I mean, you obviously need a manager at some point soon. It would be helpful, but
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of managers in the firing line that we're gonna maybe look to get in, but yeah, as you say, it probably needs to happen fairly soon, unless we're going to do a Bournemouth, as I said,
well, there is that.
and the caretaker sort of just carry on. I mean, did Graham Potter do it at Brighton as well? Was he just temporarily in charge as well? Or
No, I think he was just playing
someone?
first term
There
basis.
was someone who was caretaker and then took over, and they've done really well as well. I think maybe Darren Moore did it at West Brom as well.
Yeah, he perhaps, yeah.
There's definitely been a few.
Anyway, that is Wolves covered. We'll get on to my club, Newcastle, a 0-0 draw.
Yeah, plenty of penalty sort of.
You mean Man United were diving?
Well, what was your?
All you Man United fans watching?
What was your thoughts on the Ronaldo goal from? Was it Pope's?
Well, it just wasn't a goal, was it? I mean, if you are honestly of the opinion, from my point of view, if you honestly of the opinion that Shaw took that free kick,
yeah,
you need to give your head a bit of a wobble.
Yeah,
because he just has firstly, if you watch it, from my opinion, he kicks it a split second before the whistle. Secondly, the referee's hand is still in the air.
Yeah, that's another factor.
If
he did kick it with some sort of power,
which he didn't.
Yeah, which he didn't. But you have seen it happen before where they have actually taken them quick, so you can understand.
If I thought it was a genuine attempt to actually start the play, fair enough, I'd have no complaints. But it wasn't. He had not taken that free kick at all.
Yeah.
And so I actually think it was actually strong refereeing from Craig Pawson to go and book Ronaldo for that, because get him told that you can't just go and do what you want.
Yeah, definitely. You can understand why he's tried it.
You can understand why he's tried it, but
experience in the game, I think he knows that him out of that whole United team is probably the most likely to get a bit of a sway on the refereeing decisions.
Well, they certainly crowded the referee after he put it in, didn't they?
Quite a lot, yeah. They were like sardines.
7 of them all went around the referee straight away. But I just thought Man United, I mean, this is quite a sort of one-sided biased perspective, but they were all shouting for, the Jadon Sancho one. I mean,
I've watched it back, and I think it's that motion, isn't it, when they're in the air, but they still sort of somehow manage to fling themselves even higher.
That's the thing,
if he doesn't do that,
I don't really think Longstaff actually took. Yes, he kicks and misses the ball, but he also misses them. He doesn't really touch anything.
Yeah, I've seen him given. But
I mean, for me, it's very over the top from Jadon Sancho when he attempts to win it. He's not really that sort of doesn't warrant the reaction.
You'd think if it was an actual foul and he'd actually make contact, you don't actually have to fling yourself in the air.
Well, exactly, that's the thing.
Surely players should think that, because there's VAR now. So,
and obviously
VAR. If you know you've been touched as a winger or an attacker in the box, then why add a sort of motion to that which makes it look like a dive? Because there's no need. Because if it is a foul, then it usually is given.
That's the thing, and then obviously VAR checked it, so it wasn't a penalty. And then you look at Casemiro; he had a nice little dive as well.
Do you think it shows signs of maybe desperation at United?
I think they got to that in the second half a little bit. I mean, yes, they missed a sitter right at the end. Obviously, Marcus Rashford putting one just wide. My heart was in my mouth. But yeah, I think obviously with that Ronaldo trying to score that goal and the attempts to win a penalty, I think they were getting desperate towards that part of the second half, which is it's not great to see. I mean, resorting to things like that to try and win a game.
Yeah, that was definitely the case.
I mean, obviously the first
half taken a point now.
Well, of course. I mean, as good as we've been this season, Old Trafford's never been a happy hunting ground for Newcastle. So
Yeah.
I would have taken a point there. And to be fair, I think if a draw was a fair result, Newcastle were the better team in the first half. Might not have been a better team in the second half. It was that simple. We hit the post in the space of 10 seconds in the first half of Joelinton. The first one's a good header, hits the bar. Second one he should really do better with. Hitting the post. And then you've got the Callum Wilson penalty decision. Now, I'd say that's of all the ones that were given. I'd say that's the. I mean, fair enough that none of them were given. It shows consistency, but I think of all the ones, I think that's the one that was most like. Yeah. I mean, it's my biased perspective looking from Newcastle's point of view, but there was genuine contact there.
Yeah.
And Varane comes across Callum Wilson, and he runs and he falls over him, and so it's.
I think in a lot of Premier League games now, there's either a consistency of good decisions or a consistency of bad decisions. There's not really any in between, and you'd think VAR would help erase that. But the consistency of the rest of the referees has probably made things worse with VAR.
How many times have we come on this podcast and talk about VAR?
I think it just it kills off every sort of football debate. I mean, even on Match of the Day, when they go on about it, they do a whole section on it, don't they? Now
it's like it can't. Surely they can find some sort of way where it can work.
Yeah,
I mean, I understand like it's hard and like football's subjective, but
World Cup. If you look at the World Cup and the Euros, I think it was used to perfection.
I think it was
twice. So why is it not coming to the Premier League and being used well?
Is that just the incompetence of our referees in this country, perhaps?
I do think it might come into that because, I mean, if you look at Champions League games, for example, most of them are European refs, and as I say, the major tournaments they were as well, and they did a cracking job. I thought most they were spot on. They'd always make sure they'd check, and whether it took them a few minutes, but they'd always make sure to pretty much get the right decision. There was barely any decisions where you think, no, he's got that wrong, and then it was a talking point. It was never a talking point, really, at either of the competitions, and especially in the Champions League, consistently since it came in. So that does start to point fingers at maybe our referees.
Do you think as well? I mean, I've had a lot of. I've watched a lot of pundits suggesting there should be ex-pros helping out the referees and those on VAR, because I mean, a lot of referees. I mean, I don't know if any of them have played. They might have played the game, but how high of a standard have they played the game? And I think getting ex-pros involved would just help because they know exactly what players are like, what they do, because they were once, of course, in that situation. So I'm sure that could help. I'm sure, I think the PGMOL just needs a bit of an overhaul. It completely. Yeah. I mean, they're replacing Mike Riley with Howard Webb quite soon. So hopefully that brings a bit of a change, but I don't know. Just the standard referee in this country at the minute is not great.
It's not good. It's just not good. There's no way around it because there isn't that many terrible decisions at major tournaments where the majority of refs are European. So
yeah, I mean, was it in Russia in 2018? No English referees were there.
Yeah, and it was reffed brilliantly. I thought throughout. That was the breaking point. That competition for me was. You just looked at it and thought it ran so smoothly. All the VAR checks were so professionally done and so sort of, done with routine. And it's like they sort of practiced and knew what to sort of do. Whereas in the Premier League, they can go over to the monitor and just sort of stand there and just maybe guess half the time. I mean, it looks that way. I mean, it's absolutely.
You always know now if referee goes over to the monitor, he's pretty much going to change his decision, isn't he?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's only happened on maybe like a couple of occasions where they've actually stuck with their own decision. Like it's very rare that if he goes over, he's going to.
Incredibly rare.
Yeah.
So that takes it out for the fans as well because as soon as he's going,
he's going to change.
Yeah. So.
Oh well. Anyway, that's another rant on VAR. I can only apologise. I mean, it happens every week at this rate. But yeah, that is topic one done. We're now going to move on to a World Cup topic. Of course, we have these at some point every show at the moment. We've got two tonight. So the first of which is looking at the best teams to not win the World Cup. Obviously, it's all well and good saying who was the best team to win the World Cup, blah, 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 because, they won the World Cup. But who were the best teams to not win it? So basically, we're looking at runners-up, essentially. Those teams who were really good, didn't quite win, but who was perhaps the best of them. Charles, I'll let you kick things off. You hit us with a name.
I've gone with the Holland team in 1974. Having revolutionised, Rinus Michels of the My Research, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, having revolutionised European football with that sort of run with Ajax, with the Johan Cruyff, that sort of era, laying down the foundations for the 3 successive European Cup wins. That was amazing to do, to achieve that at the time. It was the whole sort of blueprint. If you look back now, and I'm sure it'll never go out of football, this sort of historic chat, and it's the phrase of total football. I believe that was added to the English dictionary a few weeks ago with a few of the new football phrases in the build up to the World Cup. But total football was added, and it all started with him and Ajax, and then he took it to the international stage with Holland in 1974 in West Germany. Led by, as I say, Johan Cruyff, arguably one of the greatest of all time, probably in the top 5, if not, top 3, maybe. It's obviously opinion divided, but he has to be up there. And it was just a philosophy of pressing all together. No one had ever really done it before. So cohesive and this sort of the way they change and flow on a football pitch had never been seen before. Whether it was sweeping from position to position and changing, and it just helped them get straight to that final where they did actually lose to West Germany. So that
yeah.
was
those Dutch teams back in the 70s were superb. And obviously, you mentioned 74. They got to the final in 78 as well. Lost that one against Argentina, and Mario Kempes led Argentina. But yeah, actually, just before I give mine, obviously you mentioned Johan Cruyff there. Where does he rank for you?
Well, obviously we weren't alive, but I've asked my dad and plenty of older generation people who were around watching him, and when you say, well, who's the greatest player of all time, his name always comes up. So there must be a reason. He did it in 1974 with the turn against Sweden, which actually was revolutionised as the Cruyff turn, and to have a move named after you with literally your name in it is quite impressive, really. We saw Hal Robson-Kanu sort of emulate that at the Euros in 2016 as well. It does work brilliantly. When it comes off, it's an amazing skill move. But yeah, I think Cruyff, for me, if I had to pin a top sort of, I'd say he's definitely in the top 5. If you go back and just watch some of the things he did on the ball and on the pitch, he was just superb, and not just for his club as well. It was on the country stage, and I always think that a player can't get into that top sort of 10 in ever debate without producing it for the country as well as their club. I think that's such a massive step up. That's why you see players like Pele and Eusebio and Maradona. They all did it on an international stage as well. So yeah, he's definitely up there for me. And that 1974 Holland side were certainly, in my opinion, the best team not to win it.
It's a very, very good show. I've got a couple that I'm going to mention. I'm going to go back in time a bit further here. We're going to go to 1954. Was that a dog barking there?
Yeah, sorry, my dogs are barking.
It's quite all right.
Just carry on, I'll mute myself.
Anyway, we are going to go back to 1954. Now, West Germany won this World Cup against the odds, to be honest, which was a real boost for that country, sort of in the aftermath of World War II, only 9 years after the end of the war. But the team they defeated in the final, and to be fair, I believe they were 2-0 down in the final, and then came back to win 3-2, so a bit of a turnaround. But they defeated the Hungarians. This is the Ferenc Puskás Hungarians. Now these Hungarians, they were something special back in this era of football. These were the team who came to Wembley and defeated England. England never been beaten Wembley before at this point, and they came to Wembley in just a friendly match and beat them. I think it was 6-3. Tore them apart a little bit. And I think they were sort of odds-on favourite to win the World Cup at that point. Obviously, this only been a year later from that England match. They obviously got to the final, were doing really well. I think they actually defeated West Germany in the group stages of that tournament as well. And then obviously gets to the final, they meet again, and, well, West Germany somehow do the unthinkable and win. But that just says to me that obviously that Hungarian team were probably one of the best to not win the World Cup. Just from what they did at that point.
Yeah. Was that sort of the era where Puskás was winning the European Cup?
I presume so. I don't know exactly.
Hungarian club, didn't they?
I presume so.
Yeah. Well, it was a Hungarian club. They went on a run of a few Champions Leagues, European Cups back then, and Puskás was at the full front of it, and I'm sure he did that for Hungary as well.
Yeah, as I say, they were a great side and probably deserved to win that tournament, but didn't. I mean, you think now, I know obviously Hungary defeated England recently, but Hungary certainly on the footballing powerhouse at the minute. You wouldn't think that once they were like a really good team. But then again, you look at Sweden in 1958. They got to the final and were beaten only by 17-year-old Pele.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see some of these teams. I mean, European teams especially were definitely the biggest from when the World Cup sort of began to then when obviously there was a dip when Pele took and came in and took them to glory on those occasions. But yeah, as you say, the 50s were probably more towards those Hungarians. I mean, the first floodlit midweek game was played between Wolves and the Hungarian side, and that was the first ever sort of midweek game. So that revolutionised the European football, which we know today is the Champions League and the Europa League, of course. But yeah, that's a bit of a fun fact for you on Wolves.
Thank you.
So yeah, the 50s probably you'd say Eastern European, maybe that sort of area.
Yeah,
then
they were doing quite well, I think, weren't they? I mean, the other team I was going to say, I mean, this might be a little bit biased, but I look at England in 1990.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, didn't start the group stages that well. 1-1 draw with Ireland. But then, then they came up against the Dutch of 1990 at this point, but in 88, who had won the European Championships with Ruud Gullit. Also like a great, not perhaps the Dutch side 74, but still a very, very, very good Dutch side.
Yeah.
And they got a 0-0 draw with a better team and probably were unlucky not to win that game. And then they defeat Egypt 1-0 in the final group game, and Mark Wright header, and top the group. And then they go through to the last 16. Obviously, they defeat Belgium, David Platt's winner in the last minute of extra time. Then they beat Cameroon in the quarterfinals. Obviously, they were 2-0 down in that game. They were 2-1 down and then came back to win 3-2, a couple of Gary Lineker penalties. And then I think they just got better as the tournament went on, to be honest. I think it's probably the best way of putting it. They sort of built to a bit of a head. And then obviously West Germany in the semi-final did really well in that game. Were unlucky to go behind a massively deflected free kick that went over Peter Shilton's head. With Germany the lead. But then Gary Lineker equalised with 10 minutes to go. Took it into extra time. Chris Waddle, who of course went on to blaze his penalty over the bar, hits the post inches away from England going through to the final at that point. And then, if they had won that game, obviously in the penalty shootout, we all know what happened. Stuart Pearce is saved. And then Chris Waddle blazes over the bar. That ball's still in orbit, I think. But, if England win that game, they go on to take on an Argentina side who, yes, they were the defending champions. They had won in 86, defeating West Germany in that final in Mexico, but weren't as good as they were 4 years prior. I mean, you
Yeah.
watched interviews with Bobby Robson and Gary Lineker saying that, they actually thought Germany were the better team than Argentina in that tournament. I mean,
Yeah.
Germany went on to win they beat Argentina 1-0 in the final. And so you think if England had beaten Germany and got through, they probably would have beaten Argentina, to be honest. Because, yes, they had Maradona, but Maradona wasn't at 86 levels at that point. Some of his outside life influence and lifestyle had perhaps started to kick in a little bit. And certainly by 94 in USA it had done, but he wasn't quite as good. And, he was having a bit of a detrimental effect on his playing. But as I say, as much as perhaps they weren't as good as that Dutch side 74,
It's definitely a shout.
And perhaps they weren't as good as even the Hungarian side of 54. They had a great team. Lineker up front, Peter Beardsley, then you've got Chris Waddle, you've got Paul Gascoigne. There's some big names there in that team.
Yeah.
And you think, and the reason I put them in, as I say, because I think if they beat Germany in that semi-final, they win the tournament. I think that's why I put them in there. I think they beat Argentina in the final.
So, on England in the World Cup, where do you sort of rank the 2018 side? Do you think we definitely could have gone on to win it, or do you think?
I think they would have been beaten by France in the final, but I think they still should have beaten Croatia in that semi-final.
Yeah,
I think they were a better team than Croatia, and they lost their game plan a bit in the second half, and Croatia sort of came back into it. But I think they were good enough. They showed in the first half they were good enough to be better than them and beat them.
Yeah, I think you need it. When you're sort of like the underdog in a final, you definitely need a lot of luck. But I think the World Cup's that sort of tournament that produces moments for certain players. I mean, Eusebio, Pele, Maradona, Mbappe in 2018. It was just his game. It was his time to shine, and he did that. So I think no matter who he was playing, I do think we should have got to the final. But I do think we would have lost as well to France.
I think we would have lost it, but I think we should have got to the final.
Yeah.
Anyway, we will now move on to our final topic. As I say, we're keeping things a bit short and sweet tonight because we've only got the two of us. Now, we both are wearing football tops tonight, and for good reason. Because this evening's final topic is a look at the best World Cup kits of all time. Now, this lovely number I'm wearing here was Japan's kit from 2018. Of course, that one that they nearly beat Belgium in, when they went 2-0 up. And then obviously Belgium came back to win 3-2. But Charles, I'll let you kick things off. I know which one you've got in mind as your all-time favorite World Cup kit, but do let us all know.
So the kit I've gone with sort of as an outright winner for me was France in '98. I think this kit just had a team which spoke for itself. Thuram, Pires, a 25-year-old Zidane, Desailly, and a young Thierry Henry with a little moustache as well. But I mean, the central badge, the baggy sleeves, and the collar on the shirt just made it look so classy and so good. It was actually quite good that they actually won the tournament in the end as well, because it just makes it even better. But you think of retro kits as well, and I think that is certainly one that jumps to mind, the blue with the white sort of shorter stripes and the big collar and baggy t-shirt, and it was just an amazing tournament for France, and that sort of kit revolutionized the 90s. I think if you ever go about there has been some great kits since, but I think if you're ever going to talk the best kits of all time, the 90s is so good. It just has to be the 90s as an era for producing these kits, because there was none of this sort of pro player technology that we see now with all the tight fit. It was just so stylish and classy, and I think France really played well in the kit and just showed what the 90s was all about. So yeah, the French players of course made it as memorable as well with the great World Cup win, but that's the main kit that stands out for me when I think the best kits to appear at a World Cup, definitely.
Very good. Now again, I've got a couple in mind. I'm going to start with West Germany in 1990, I think it was. It's an Adidas kit. It just had sort of the German flag sort of coming down, I think, from one of the shoulders in sort of like an Adidas sort of three-stripe way, and it's really quite a lovely thing to look at. And the other one I've got in mind, I did consider England 1990 because it's brilliant, but I'm actually going to go England 1982.
Let me give it a Google.
Give it a Google. Give it a Google. I'll let you see what you think of it.
Oh yeah, I do like that one.
It's
Is that the one who had the head injury and was bleeding all over it? Is that sort of that?
No, that was Paul Ince in
Was it?
'98, but I don't think it was at a World Cup.
Uh,
And then there was Terry Butcher as well. He had one as
That's
well.
it,
He was
yeah.
bleeding all over, but I think that was more 1990. But again, not at a World Cup. But yeah, this one won by the likes of Glenn Hoddle, Kevin Keegan in '82 in Spain, and I just love that. That blue and red at the top on the shoulders. I think it's an Admiral kit, and I think Admiral they made some really good kits for England.
Yeah.
And I just really like it, to be honest. We did. I mean, there are some modern ones that are perhaps deserve a shout out. I think we mentioned, was it Nigeria in 2018? That's quite a nice.
Yeah,
looking
that just sold out straight away. You couldn't get your hands on it unless you were some sort of famous person with a name. It appeared. I mean, they were all wearing it, whether it was, film stars, rappers. But I don't know. It was just obviously they're only one nation in Africa, but they sort of brought together the whole, continent in Africa at that World Cup, and it is a nice kit. You have to say it is really well put together and well sort of created as well. So, and
I
nice.
actually quite like this Japan kit I'm sporting tonight.
Yeah, I looked a few of the best sort of modern ones, and the Japan one came up, and I didn't realise how nice it was.
I like the sort of camouflage on it, which
Yeah.
I think it's quite nice, to be honest.
The away
This
one's nice as well.
this came from Japan. This was bought in Japan. This stuff.
Oh, nice.
My dad was there on a work trip a couple of years ago. Well, a few years back, and he brought it back for me, and so here we are. But yeah, it's a really lovely number. I mean, any others that stand out for you before we wrap things up tonight?
You know what? Because they won it as well. I think the France 2018 was really nice as well. Actually, I really like the
You're really
shade.
supporting the French tonight, aren't you? You're really.
I don't know why. I just think the French have really nice kits over the years. They've definitely produced some of the best. That one was really nice. Germany in 2014, I really like that, but it's probably just because they stand out as a team. As that win against Brazil as well was impeccable, and the 2002 Brazil as well. That sort of whole collaboration with Nike was one of the first, mainly to do it with Nike, and they all sort of, not just the kit itself, but they were all rocking around before the games in their TNs that Nike had obviously given them, the full Nike tracksuits. They all looked pretty pretty cool, if that's the word to use. I mean, you look at Ronaldinho and Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Roberto Carlos. These were players who just looked like they were going to cause some damage on the pitch, and they definitely did.
It's always the same way that the game was won before it even kicked off, sort of thing.
Yeah, they just look so stylish, and those kits. I mean, the yellow one was really nice, but the blue one that doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, that was a really nice kit, and it went with not just the training gear, but the boots as well. That R9 sort of revolutionised as well. The T9, that sort of era started after that, and obviously they won it as well. So it was really nice.
Very good. Well, I think, as I say, a bit of a shorter and sweeter podcast tonight. As I say, we can't waffle forever, put it that way. Anyway, Charles, thank you very much as always. It's been good to talk about football as we do every Monday. We will be back next week, same time. And until then, we wish you a very good night, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.